Welcome to the Sleeping Barber Podcast.
Post-pod.
A little more excitement. It's the post-pod with me and Mark.
Yes!
Who's excited?
I'm excited. Hands up.
Let's go.
Let's get into this. Like we were just joking at the beginning that we have the best conversations when we hit stop on the recording, and then we did again have the most amazing conversation. So let's carry this every time. Okay, so a couple things that came up after we stopped recording. I just want to flag this with Amina. Well, not flag it with Amina, but flag it with you so we can maybe talk about this. So algorithms, we didn't really get into during the conversation, but the algorithm optimizing for things like there's all these mental health issues and stuff that keep coming up in part because of like the data that's being used is just generating attention or being used to generate attention, which is creating some of this mental health issue, which then makes you wonder about the ethics of advertising on certain platforms or not. So that would be one. And then there's this, well, let's just start there. What do you think?
Man, I was talking about this just again right when we were kind of closing up with Amina. But when I look at the way my parents are inundated with a lot of this information that's based on algorithms, you know, I'll give you an example. I would argue they're fairly religious. So like the content that they consume on, say, YouTube and things like that have to align somewhat to their religious beliefs. But we also know like religion at sometimes can create like these echo chambers. So then by doing so, they're only subjected to one point of view on the religious side. And sometimes like we'll get into these conversations and you're like, this is not my dad talking to me. Someone else is talking to me right now. Yeah. And it's because there's an assumption on the algorithm. Because you watched this, there is a likely probability that you may be interested in this topic. Yeah. And that is an assumption that the algorithms are making based on other signal that they're getting on based on these audiences. And it becomes extremely dangerous because without people realizing your new opinions or your thoughts are being reshaped with inaccurate information. Yeah. And I think when we talk about ethics in advertising, there's a big play here on ethics in the content that is available to the masses. But then the onus does go on the consumer there. It's like, oh, you know what? I don't want to engage myself in this type of conversation. But the algorithms already picked it up as a signal. And this is the problem, right? So unless you're going back, you're clearing your histories, you're removing everything, which a lot of people don't.
Totally.
You're kind of stuck in this place. So it could be a moment in time you're interested in one topic, something. It's like, hey, I want to find out more here. All of a sudden, that's a signal. So you're on TikTok, you're on Instagram, you're on YouTube. Doesn't matter. All the platforms do this, and you're just inundated with this information constantly, and it's dangerous. It is so dangerous. And I don't think having this conversation is the first step. I think driving more awareness to this is really, really important. But we have to hold ourselves as marketers also to a higher level of accountability within organizations and how do we practice data and data sharing ethically. It concerns me, if I'm honest, Mark. Like I don't know.
Yeah, I'm with you. Like, there's a conversation about just because you can doesn't mean you should. Yeah, and so there's a line that I think it's for all of us to decide on. You know, what is the can line and what is your should line? And you know, it may not be the same, but if you can get those closer together, we should do this because we can do this, or we can do this. And we should do this. Like if you can get those two lines together and close that gap, I think is good. Example for me, again, we said this to Amina when we were not recording, but we used Zoom Info at a company I was at previously. And the idea there was you can put in all your targeting criteria of the kinds of people you want to reach. You can then pay for it, and you download all of this PII that's available, so you can then build out lists and then target them with email campaigns and so on and so forth. So you can do that. You can do that. But should you do that is kind of dependent on whether or not your company believes that that's the right thing to do.
Yep.
If you're in Canada, there's lots of rules that say you shouldn't.
You shouldn't.
Because it's not consent. Then state by state, to Amina's point earlier, like California's got different rules than, say, Ohio. And so there's all kinds of things you got to consider. And so just because you've done something before, that's the way we do things around here, doesn't necessarily mean that's the should part. Doesn't mean you should do it that way going forward.
Exactly.
Yeah. It's really important, I think, especially when it comes to trust and, any kind of, imagine having a leak of all your customer data. Like, how much of a problem would that be?
Well, we've seen it. Look at the Home Depot case. Like that in of itself was like a big wake up call for a lot of organizations that have been leaning on a lot of these data sets.
Yeah.
And it's what is the voice of the marketer in this? It's a pretty loud one. Remember, we are the voice of the consumer inside these organizations.
Yeah.
We have to hold ourselves to a higher level of accountability with a lot of our targeting practices and the ways that we go to market. And I don't think that I don't believe, and I'm making a generalization here, I know I am, I don't know how many of us are actively thinking about this every day. Because we're very comfortable in saying, let's just remarket this audience, let's suppress them this way. It's like, do you hear yourself?
Yeah. Well, it's a good point, because there's also this influence everywhere about, the move is towards first-party data. Cookies are going away, so let's move towards first-party data. Okay.
Sure.
Yeah. We can. Should we? Asking the question
exactly
is really important. Or if maybe the bridge question is, what would have to be true? Again, this is a Roger Martin and Jennifer Real thing, I think. But what would have to be true for that to be a good idea? Which is really important, I think, to ask some questions before you just go ahead and do it.
Totally. Yeah, I don't know. So Amina shared she shared a lot of great thoughts. But one thing is we like to think of frameworks here as much as possible. Mm-hmm. And she highlighted three things. So the first one being make sure it's an organization, you're really transparent, you're really honest, and you have this lens of social well-being kind of at the heart of everything that essentially that you do and you think. And I think that's a great way to, at first, even assess your current state. You can use those three areas and saying, how transparent are we? Yeah. We aren't very transparent. Are policies actively accessible to the public? Yes, no, maybe. Are we being honest with the way that we're using the data? Or are we being kind of creative in the wording and how, we're manipulating the words that could imply multiple things? So how honest are you actually? And then finally, thinking about it from a well-being or social well-being perspective is again, should we? That is a very, very important question that I think we have an onus on to ensure that we're actively doing this the right way. Was there anything else for you that kind of stood out from our conversation with Amina?
Yeah, there's the idea around looking for differing opinions. It relates a little bit to your comment about the algorithms, but in general, there isn't necessarily a clear black and white answer for a lot of this stuff. And so having a perspective and appreciating the validity of someone else's point in this, I think is totally valid. Yeah. And a good way to go forward, because there might not be the right answer when it comes to how do we best manage data, as an example. But having heard other people's opinions gives you a broader scope. And so the idea around ignorance isn't really a good defense. Being able to include other people's ideas and thoughts and, an approach to becoming more ethical, I think is a really good idea.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. The more voices, the better.
Yeah. Anyways, really good. Yeah, go ahead. No,
yeah, just the one last thing. And we talked about it as we closed up as well, but technology is not a substitute for ethics. I absolutely love that line.
Yeah.
I love that
me too.
line.
Yeah, because we default to like that so often, right?
Yeah.
Like the technology can do it, but maybe not.
But maybe
do we know it's doing it? Yeah. I mean, there's that, what's his name? Dr. Fu, Fu Analytics that makes me think of that. Yeah. Where like, just because you think you're putting impressions out doesn't actually mean you're putting impressions out. There's a whole bunch of bots and all that kind of stuff that's happening that you may not be delivering nearly the thing you think you are. And the same thing is true with ethics. It's even more ambiguous, I would say, than an impression.
Well, there's this new measure now. Like it's ability, like quality traffic is what they're calling it. Yeah. And it's like, what does that mean?
Yeah.
Like, what does quality traffic mean?
Yeah. It reminds me of non-viewable impression. like, what? Okay. What's the non-viewable impression?
Yeah, I don't know. It's this intersection that we're at as marketers, the digital landscape, how it's constantly evolving. This ethics in our practices is going to be even more and more important as we continue to move forward. And I almost think about and I don't want to call them the early days, but it must have been great when you just had TV, radio, and print to really worry about, right? And the ethics was really with the advertiser and how they were showing up, right? That it was really confined in one area. Whereas today, I don't know, pick a platform. Like, it doesn't even matter. It's different. Every platform is different.
Yeah. Well, because the algorithms, even within the platforms, they're not the same.
Yeah.
Right? There's so many like experiences that are real to each individual person using it.
Totally.
Yeah, it's a weird one. That is a bit of a mind fuck.
It is, man. It is. Just do TV, radio, and print, everybody. That's the TLDR on this episode.
But where did the print paper come from? Is it ethically sourced?
As long as if it's ethically sourced paper, then go ahead.
Yeah. Anyway, I do think, for me, the takeaway is it's important to have learning, like invest some time in understanding more. Like, it's not about like winning, a goal, scoring a goal when it comes to this. For me, it's more about like just progress. So investing some time to learn more about this. And then the other one is having a point of view, and that might end up being a policy for a company, which I'm going to think about for the Calgary Marketing Association for sure.
Yeah.
Because we don't have one right now, as far as I know. Yeah.
And just continue to raise awareness. I think going back to what we talked about, we as marketers do have the responsibility, an active responsibility in here, and making sure that we are the voices of the consumers being heard through our voices internally.
Yeah.
So don't. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, I'm going to put a Canadian marketing code of ethics and standards in the link for us to look at from the Canadian Marketing Association, because I think it's a good idea to look at it and see what's in there in my case, what I can steal from that and what I can learn from it. Yeah, totally. I don't need to recreate the wheel, but just to learn also their perspective on things.
Agreed.
Yeah. Okay, buddy.
This was great, man.
Yeah.
Thanks, Amina.
V, we'll see you on the next episode.
We will.
I'm not sure what it's going to be right now, but I am very excited to chat with you again.
We've got a pretty packed schedule. It's good. It's a good thing. It's a good thing.
Yeah.
All right, man.
Okay, buddy.
Have a good one.
You too. Ciao.